So back in 2010, when I was living in LA, I did an amazing voiceover promo class. It was an 8-week class, and I met Abigail Wald. And she and I became fast friends. And I have watched her do some extraordinary things over the last 15 years. Everything from be an amazing voice actor to starting a food company out of her kitchen, the Yes Bar, if you've had one, they're delicious, to creating the Mother Flipping Awesome community. And when it came time to do the beta group for my Skinny 60 program, I invited 60 people to participate. And I just knew that Abigail had to be one of them because not only was she going to show up and be really present and participate fully, but she was going to give me really honest feedback about the experience. And she was also going to hold space for others in a really respectful way. That's one of her superpowers. So years later, she returned to Skinny 60 and she and I started talking about the experience, and I got a little bit of a peek into her Mother Flipping Awesome community. And we realized that they were mirror communities, the way that she supports parents in helping their families to be more harmonious and be able to hold their reality, their ecosystem, their community, and be fully present in their experience, whatever that looks like. It's very similar to the way that we hold the container for participants of our program. And the more I entered her world, the more I just fell in love with it. So I just had to have her on the podcast so you can get a little bit of a taste of the way that she supports parents. She's got some fantastic wisdom to share. So let's get the skinny from Abigail Wald.
Oh, Abigail, I am so excited to be here with you to have this conversation. I was just saying a minute ago, the day I met you was such a great turning point in my life. And it's just been so thrilling to watch you claim the different parts of yourself. And one of the things I admire the most about you is that you are so clear about who you are and what your offering is in any relationship, any interaction with anybody. So, listener, I'm so excited that you can curl up with us today and hear the two of us have this conversation. Now, I don't normally do this, but I normally just sort of introduce somebody the way that I see them. But today I'm actually going to read something to you that I grabbed from Abigail's website because it does the most incredible job of explaining who she is and what she does in the world better than I ever could. So here goes, Abigail. Do not judge me, fellow voice actor. Abigail Wald helps parents press reset on their parenting lives, cleaning up one sticky, gooey corner at a time. Because while parenting fills our hearts with more love than we ever thought possible and gives our lives a deep sense of purpose and meaning, it also messes with our mind, body, sleep, relationships, career, identity, priorities, and sometimes even our sanity. If you need a reset, visit motherflippinawesome.com/reset and get parenting support that feels as good to you as it does to your kid. Did I do okay, Mommy? But I just feel like, oh, thank you for how you are showing up and thank you for claiming this part of yourself. I'm really excited for people to hear what you have to say today.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I am so excited. I love this whole concept of it has to be me because I think it's so clearly connected to I think one of the very first problems parents face and that we all face in our lives is like, why am I here? Why have I brought someone else into this world? What is my job? And like what has to be me? And I think there's no better lens to look at for just being a human and coming into ourselves, let alone raising another human. It's just such a good question.
Well, you always ask so many interesting questions whenever you're with anyone. I mean, I don't know about you, but that's a red flag for me when I meet someone and they don't ask me one question. And you just constantly ask questions of yourself and others, and that's how we get to the juice. So I want to ask you some questions today. So I know, it's great. So you think of your life in two distinct phases.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
For me, very much, it's before children and after children. There's no question. And, I think not necessarily everybody feels that way who has kids, but I think I know there are parents listening today who are nodding their heads thinking, yeah, yeah, there's the person I was before who really it was like I was in the book of my life having all these different experiences, um and then all of a sudden becoming a parent. And I think for me, very particularly, the way that I became a parent, because my firstborn had a lot of really big medical issues and had a condition at birth that the doctors called incompatible with life. And thank God
Oh,
today he is a thriving, healthy 17-year-old. But his medical stuff has been part of our lives and will continue to be part of his life, our lives. And it was the first time that I so clearly understood. And I remember during the pregnancy thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is such an intense thing for us to go through. And then at some point realizing, wait a minute, this is his story. Like this is his life. Like I'm a player in his book. And that sense of just that voomph of like just a totally different perspective on life. And it changed everything.
so tell me more about that "it has to be me" moment when you were scared to death, didn't know how you were going to navigate this. Take me inside of that a bit more.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's interesting because I think so many parents feel this. And again, each of us comes to this experience from our own sensitivities, right? Whether
Yeah.
you're trying to get away from trauma of your own childhood or trying to recreate a gorgeous life, or, suddenly you've got all these kids that you thought would get along great, but now they're fighting all the time. Like, parenting pits your greatest desires against your gnarliest realities, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the dream, it's like the rubber ducky hits the road, and you have to suddenly make sense of why your everyday isn't living up to the life you thought it would or could it would, or no, thought it would or could. And so all of a sudden that really forces you into this place. And I think, again, because for us, one of those things is like, is he going to make it? Are we going to be able to do this? Are we equipped for this ride? And having to rise up to be the parent he needed us to be, both my husband and me, and then just it was so clear. I think something we don't talk about with parenting is like you're literally responsible for another human's life, like their emotional well-being, their medical well-being, their financial, their nutritional, their everything. And it's like, oh, you're having a baby, or you're adopting, or oh, that's so great. And it's like, actually, this is a 24/7 job with stakes that are like unimaginable.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about it. And so the thing was, for me, I kept needing help because our crucible was hot, our
Yeah.
personal crucible. And it wasn't just like, oh, everything went easily. And then, yeah, oh, cool. Yeah, it's so sweet. It was like, oh my God. It all just felt so real, so epic. And then it was like, well, how do you have a marriage on top of that? And how do you care for yourself and all the things that so many parents are dealing with? But for me, they felt so intense, and I kept looking for help. And everywhere I'd go, it was like the answers were too simple for such a complex problem. You
Oh,
know,
tell
or
me more about that. Tell me more about what you were not getting in the places where you were looking for support and answers, and what you were rubbing up against.
yeah, okay. Oof. This brings up two very particular memories, both very painful. Uh, One of them kind of funny. But my first moment of pain. So there were a number of them, but like there would be these moments where all of a sudden I would feel like, wow, my story feels so different. Like I'd be looking around at a room of, whether it was pregnant women about to give birth, and I'm trying to figure out like which NICU we're going to be in and who's the best
Yeah.
surgeon. It was just like, it felt so different and so alone. And then after I had two children, I decided to take a parenting class, and it wasn't my first rodeo. I had tried several times, and I took this parenting class, and she was talking all about, regulating your emotions and all the things you needed to give your children. And I remember raising my hand in this small group, and I said, but what about if I'm feeling rage? And I
Ooh.
remember she looked at me like, you didn't. Just broke the mommy code.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, seriously, like, what if it's taking hours to go to bed and I'm starting to lose my patience and I know what they need, but I need to be done?
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, well, sounds like you need help. And I was like,
That's why I'm here.
yeah. And I was like, oh, and I felt so gut punched, and like something was so clearly wrong with me that I
Yes.
couldn't just spend hours putting my kids to bed and just feel delightful about it. Like, I mean, I loved my kids, but I was like, I'm gonna die if I have to spend another minute doing this. That was the feeling, was like you don't understand. There's so little of me, and I have nothing left, and I can't be this person I'm supposed to be for you anymore. And I couldn't understand why nobody was talking about that.
And everybody else in the group just sat there and nobody said, I feel like that
Silence,
sometimes too.
silence. Everybody just
Whoa.
stared at me, and I was like, okay, we can go on. And I just sat
Wow.
there. And then for weeks after, my husband kept saying to me, every time like 6 o'clock would roll around, he'd be like, it's time to go to angry mommy class now. Cause I would get so mad.
So what was the second thing?
So the second moment was, I just remember thinking, like, is nobody else having all these big feelings about parenting? Like, is anybody else's child like trying to headbutt them to the point where they're bleeding? Or like, is anybody else like, wondering about their marriage and thinking like they should have just decided to become a paratrooper? Like, does anybody have these thoughts? Like, I just like, I don't know. I was like, is it just me? That was my question. Is it just me?
Okay,
And
so take me into this it has to be me moment where you went, that's the kind of support that you are craving and desperately needing
yeah,
is not out there. And so
yeah.
instead of crawling up in a ball, you went, it has to be me to build it and create it and start getting up there and telling more of the truths.
Yes. Well, I was reading a lot about parenting at the time. And I read one essay that a woman had written about how having her child felt like having a limb cut off. And I was like, oh yeah, I totally know
Ooh.
what you mean. I remember
Yeah.
thinking, well, that's crazy. I can't believe I just said that. But she was like, it just feels like I'm going through the day and there's like parts of me missing. And yet I've got to do more with less. And I was like, I
Yes.
totally understand. And I was like, thank you. And so I had this moment of like, ooh, it feels really good for somebody to, be honest about this experience and say something that's kind of like really gnarly. But I knew what she meant. And then there was this other story in, I don't remember, but it was like a big paper, like whether it was the San Francisco Chronicle, New York Times, it was like something. And it was a story about like a woman saying, today is the day I'm finally going to tell the truth about parenthood and what it can feel like when we get mad. And she tells this, and I was like, oh, thank you. And I read this story, and she tells this whole story about how she got upset. And at one point, her son asked for crayons. And instead of handing them sweetly, she threw them down the stairs. And I was like, and she then goes on to talk about how this is the most embarrassing moment of her life. She can't believe she's going to write this and admit that this is the kind of parent she is, and that like
Yeah.
she had this hard moment. And I thought, really? Because it's not like I'm not an abusive parent, God forbid. I'm not screaming at my kids, but like I've had harder moments than like throwing crayons. Do you know what I mean? Like I've had moments where I'm literally questioning my existence, where I'm like white knuckling it on what feels like a rock face, thinking, how do I climb up here? Like, can we talk about that? And
So
so
sorry, I just have to interject here because I got so many thoughts spinning around in my head. The word that keeps coming up for me as you're talking is permission.
mm,
Like we go back, you broke the mummy code. If you talk about the realities of all the gamut of emotions, you're only allowed to experience these emotions: joy, pure love,
yeah,
unconditional, blah blah blah. But it's all the things, and you continue to have a human experience even after you are a parent, and you just put another hat into the mix, right? And you've got to juggle it all. So, what was it in you that when it has to be me to give myself permission to admit that I am feeling all the things, and I want to give other parents permission to do the same, and I'm going to hold this space of absolute honesty about this experience, whatever it looks like?
such a good question. I love that you said the word permission. It's so accurate. And to be clear, I had all of the love and all of the joy. I just not being able to be all of me was actually attacking the love and the joy because I
Oh,
I
yeah.
I couldn't feel all the love and the joy because I was only supposed to feel love and joy, and I'm not. I'm a bit of a rebel. So when you tell me I can only look to my left, I'm like, why? What's on the right? That's just how I'm built, right? And so I'm also someone who's just a deep truth teller. I can't lie. And so
Yeah, you
I
and I have that in common. That's why we're friends.
yeah, I can't lie. I can't. I'm like,
And it gets us into trouble, right?
but I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so I was sitting there for a while and it felt like I was sitting on my hands and I was like, I'm just going to say it and see if anybody else has this experience. And I remembered how it freed me to read that mother's experience. And I remember how it stymied me and shamed me to read that other mother's experience. And I thought, we need more people talking. It needs to feel honest because this is how we get to the love. Not because we need more people complaining, but we need to be honest so we can feel the depth of the love. And
Mm.
that was when I was like, I'm going to just start talking. So I started, a podcast. I started I went to a preschool and I was like, I'd like to give a talk. And I started training also. I was very lucky that I did finally find some parenting resources hand in hand. One of them that actually did teach me to tell my truth, and they caught me in my truth, and I started to feel how powerful that was, and that there's this whole movement that needed to happen of being able to be honest. And
Yeah.
my honesty knew no bounds. So I needed to get it out there. And so I went to this preschool. I offered 20 parents a spot in this program. 16 parents took me up on it. And before I knew it, I was
Wow.
leading parents and I never looked back. I mean, it's been over 10 years now. And it's been the most extraordinary experience. And I have found that I am so not alone.
So not alone. I loved what you said before about they caught me in my truth. They caught me in my experience. Oh, I love that image of being caught, being held, being accountable, being loved. I mean, I think that's what you do so well, so many things so beautifully in your community,
Mm.
but catching it.
Yeah.
When you're in a relationship, it's like there's a ball between you, and you throw the ball, you catch it, and then you put out your offer, and then you catch it, and we don't drop the ball. The
Yeah.
ball remains in play, and we get to throw it the way we want to throw it and receive it and catch it. I really love that image. So when you created this community and you really listened to that, it has to be me moment.
Mm.
I want to hear a little bit about how it evolved and developed and how you were facilitating this community and catching the truths of others while throwing out your own truth, and how the community has evolved and become what it is today. I just want to get inside of that a little bit, because it's one thing to say, well, I'm going to start telling the truth and encourage other people to tell the truth. But the way that we hold that is very delicate,
Mm.
with the care and respect, and the container that we put it in is quite particular in in any circumstance, but particularly in this. What is that catch and release for you like in the community?
So interesting that you asked that. And again, the word you use, container, is a word that we use very often in our community. So I started teaching in person, and then I quickly started teaching online well before the pandemic,
Yeah.
because I realized that part of my mission was to reach parents worldwide, that we were all globally engaged in the same secret life all alone, and that actually
Ooh.
we needed to stop being alone, and we needed to connect, because we were all literally holding the future of the world in each of our collective arms, in
Yeah.
individual arms.
Yeah.
And
It's a
we
huge
needed,
responsibility.
it's a huge responsibility. And to be able to go like, hey, hi, do you feel this way? Do you feel this way? Do you feel this way? And then have it come back, you know?
I do.
And
I do. I do.
exactly. And then the thing was, well, I didn't want this to be a space where we're just, bitching about it. I wanted it to
Yeah.
be a space where we're actually creating change and rising up, because like I said, I love parenting. Parenting is the most incredible spiritual journey I have personally ever been invited to. It has been a remarkable thing for me. And I wasn't even someone who necessarily always knew I wanted to be a parent. I really didn't. um I think I always knew I would be a parent, but I wasn't somebody who was like, oh, I just love kids. Like I just I knew there was something that was really important to me about this concept. I remember as a child looking at my mother and thinking like, gosh, she needs support, and thinking as a child like, this is a really big job I'm doing growing up. And like, where are we holding that in society? Do you know what I mean? Like, what are we doing? And so container is really what we do. We help parents help children, and we help
Mm.
everyone climb that mountain. And everybody has different places where they need support. And so what we realized very quickly is that, what I realized, because it was really just me running this for many, many, many years. And now I have parents who have gone through my program. Like, and if somebody goes through my program like 3 times, ultimately I'm like, do you want to work here and help support other
Yeah.
kids? And then they
Yeah.
do. And so now we have like 5 or 6 people who help support in different ways, right?
And help people enjoy when you're on top of the mountain and you're
Yes.
anywhere else on the mountain.
We're like the Marines of parenting. It's like, enjoy the suck, like learn how to love it, because
Yeah.
it means something, and it's a gorgeous, gorgeous invitation to your life. And these are parents' years too. Like, I don't think parenting should be just about childhood. I think it's also about your middle years of your life. Like, this isn't a time where it's only about your kids, but it is a time where you learn servitude and you learn how to rise into your own leadership. And so very quickly I realized, like, okay, there's certain things we're going to be doing. We're going to be teaching leadership. We're going to be teaching actual skills with actual kids. We're going to be teaching for kids who are different, whether they're neurodivergent, highly sensitive, on the spectrum, ADHD, or just strong-willed, because those are the kids who really take parents to their brink, right?
Mm.
And also helping parents who may have trauma from their own childhood or trauma from a birth or whatever's going on, or maybe the relationship, maybe they're going through divorce and they never experienced or plan to experience that. And so anything that makes parenthood story a little bit more intense, a little bit more epic. If you have a very simple entry into parenthood with really simple kids and you've got a lot of support in your life, maybe you're not feeling so much of that need. But most of us come in having at least one hole, and some of us have many holes. And we're here to be that net, to catch you, to say, wherever your holes are, we are your net, and we teach you how to get up this mountain. We will carry you all the way to the top, right? And then you can carry others.
Yeah, I want to ask you about something this thread that I want to pull on a little bit because it's really of interest to me. You talked before about helping parents step into leadership.
Mm.
And stepping into leadership comes more easily to some than it does to others, depending on how you were parented and the people that have been role models in your life and what you have been given permission to do in your life and what you feel you have permission to do or what society celebrates about you or doesn't. And I think that's different for men and women and certain men and certain women, not to even tie it to gender. But our sense of identity and whether we are leaders or not, and we are all leaders, we are all followers, we all have a voice, we all have something to say, and we all have something to contribute that is of value. So what has been your experience in your community around that part of different people claiming the leadership responsibility that comes with being a parent?
I think it's a huge place that parents deserve, what we call in our community a reset. Okay. So it's like parenting is really challenging for many reasons. One of the top reasons is that sense of leadership. So it's very, very difficult. Um, you know, it's almost like you become a mom and it feels like you're stepping away, you're stepping out. It's very private, um and it's like you sometimes you're losing your friends who may not have kids yet, or you're stepping down out of work. It feels like sometimes a demotion, but then also a
Mm.
promotion. Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's like this very complicated world that then you're sort of invited into. But then again, it's very private because maybe you go to the mommy and me classes or the daddy and me classes, but really it's all really happening in the confines of your home. And because of how we live today, where we're not living in large communities, we're mostly living in private little single homes. 90+% of your life is played out in these quiet four walls. Yes. And
Mm.
so it's very hard to feel like a leader when you're still learning and you don't even know what you're doing and other people aren't sharing their truth with you. You're not seeing what it looks like inside other people's four walls, right? So you're trying to lead in a vacuum, and you're leading by like reading a book or listening to a podcast or understanding best practices. But those best practices might not have anything to do with the specifics of your life. So now you've got a woman who is often looked at differently. Let's say she's suddenly a mom, and suddenly people don't even call you by your name. People start calling you mommy all the time. And so you don't even have a name anymore.
Yeah.
And you're just like this vessel that just helps other people. Do you know? And all of a sudden your kid is taking like center focus, and it's very destabilizing personally. So it's hard for you to step into leadership because A, you don't have the mentorship. B, you don't have the community. C, you're kind of going out of your mind, stuck in your own four walls. D, you may not have it written in your own DNA from your own genetic background. Like it may not be in your body. What does leadership here look like? It may not have been handed to you. And then if you're a dad, it may not be expected of you in the same way, or it may be weird if all of a sudden you're seeing your leadership in your family instead of at work. It's like it's
Yeah.
just odd. We don't this most important job we're all supposed to somehow do quietly and do it really well
Without any training.
without any training.
Yeah. And a lot of people tend to parent the way they were parented because that's the only example that they have, that they
Yeah.
can sort of tie, tether themselves to.
Yeah.
So what are some of the big ways that you see parents struggling? What are the biggest things? Let's get some tangible strategies from you for
Absolutely.
listener. If you're
So
listening to Abigail going, yeah, that's me. That's me. I can relate to all of this.
yeah.
I want to get some tangible strategies here from you.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing, like, parents, I just want you to know, I know you deeply love your kids, and you may also be struggling. These two truths are not a problem to live together. It doesn't make you a bad parent. Okay. It just makes you a real human. And I think also to say, if it feels harder for you, I want you to stop feeling gaslit by the world. I want you to know that if it feels harder for you, it genuinely probably is. And it's usually one of these 5 places where parents struggle and need a reset. Okay. So the very first place is like what you just talked about. So maybe you have a strong imprint from your own childhood, and maybe that's a bad imprint, quote unquote. It's like, I want to parent really differently than how I was parented.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a really positive imprint. Like, my parents did the most perfect job in the world, and I want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And either one of those ways can get you into trouble, because we have something that I call a silent promise. And I'll explain what that is in a moment. But when I say that to you, that like when a person, either in their own childhood or even as a parent, when they first have a child, or think about having a child, or the first time they hold their child, that they make a silent promise they're not even aware of. Like, does that mean anything to you? Like, can you imagine what that might be at all? This idea of like a silent promise. And I can elaborate on it if not. It's like this idea that like I promise my child I will not, whatever it was you grew up with, be an alcoholic or hit you or scream or let your brother beat up on you, or whatever those things were that you're trying to get away from. Or it can be a silent promise of, I love how my parents brought us up. I love that my parents stayed together. I promise I will always stay married. How can you promise that?
Well, what's coming up for me as you're saying these things is it's just one simple sentence of, I promise that I will be the perfect parent who never makes one single mistake.
Yeah. And
And it's just not possible because we're all humans who are going to make mistakes and keep learning and growing. So the pressure and the magnitude of that responsibility can lead us into places where we put these completely unrealistic expectations on ourselves, where we're constantly disappointed about who we are and how we've been able to show up today.
absolutely. Or who our spouse is, or who our ex is, or who our school is, or who our kid is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we wind up thinking, and I'm just going to say this, it's like, again, I'm breaking the mommy code, but sometimes we think, I'm doing this right. It's my kid who won't let me be the right parent. My kid is being
Ooh.
difficult. I'm giving my kid everything, and it's my kid's temperament or habits or behavior that's the problem. And the reality is, parenting is a relationship between two humans. It's a relationship. And so that's the other place that we need a reset, is understanding that we have to have a whole new relationship to relationship, right? So whether
Yeah,
that's
tell me about that.
relationship to your ex, to your partner, to your spouse, to your schools, to your doctors, to your kid, you have to learn that you are literally one piece of this puzzle, and that there can be more than one truth. And that actually
Yeah.
the only way you win is if we both win. The only way we win is if I can get humble enough to make space for your truth to be right, to see the rightness in maybe the wrongness of your behavior, to understand that you are complete and whole and perfect as you are. And if I see things differently, I can still allow myself to be right in my wrongness, and to know that like there is a rightness and there's a truth, and I have to find the Venn diagram where we both win, where I don't win at your expense and you don't win at mine.
It's
And
it's
that's
hard to navigate that space though, right? Because that is a space that is negotiated between two
yes,
people. And when there's a power imbalance and you've got a parent and a very young child, uh, and you can correct me about this if I'm going down the wrong rabbit hole here, but this idea that your child is an appendage of you, right? It's part of you because it came from you, which is a truth, but they're their own unique being. And so
absolutely.
figuring out how to be in relationship with this whole person who's young and is still learning and growing and developing and changing every single day, and so are you. I mean,
Yeah,
that is the opportunity. We think of it as a challenge and a dilemma or a disaster or a crisis, but it's actually an opportunity. Let me get to know you better today.
exactly. Exactly. And we have, it's that voomph I was talking about in the very opening, where it's like, it's actually when you realize like my 10-month-old has an opinion. They may not be right?
Yes.
But they have an opinion, they have a temperament, they have a personality, they have things they want and don't want. And just because I want to get them in the car seat right now, the fact that they don't, they're not wanting to go in the car seat is equally as valid. Now, if I've got to get on a flight and they don't know that, but I need to get them in the car seat because we got to get to a plane, then it's okay for me to have to put them in to the car seat because I understand a context that I can't yet necessarily fully communicate. But if I can understand that on a person to person level, their unwillingness to get in the car seat matters. It's not just an inconvenience. They're not being difficult. They have a real and present feeling that deserves honor and care. And we've got to make it to the goddamn airport.
Totally. And you hear this all the time. People go, I don't know where this kid came from. I mean, this kid is nothing like us. We don't do this in our family. This kid is a unicorn. So, when you give birth to a unicorn that feels like they were dropped in a basket on the doorstep and is just absolutely nothing like anyone else in the family. What do you do with that?
I might be uniquely qualified to answer this. So my first son was my unicorn, and I remember holding him immediately after birth and thinking like he felt like stardust. He felt like the little prince. Like he didn't look like me. He had blonde hair and blue eyes forever. Right? I was
Where
like,
did that come
"Are
from?
you sure?" And like,
Have I got the right kid?
he had the same medical condition we were expecting, and he did just come out of me, so I knew it was him. But I was like, wow, really? Okay, nice to meet you. And he has continued to surprise me at every turn. And the more I've gotten to know him, he's 17 now, and I have the great honor of being through so many different areas of growth with my kids who are now 15 and 17, and I can see all the ways in which actually we are so similar as well.
Yeah.
And
And it
we
can be
are,
both, as you
yeah,
keep saying.
and we are so different. And so I've had to learn his language and learn that he truly is another human. And, he is a very strong-willed kid. And it's funny, I actually had him on my podcast once and I said, so I'm going to ask you, like, do you think you're strong-willed? And he goes, I think I might be the most strong-willed kid that ever existed. Yeah. And
Oh,
like,
I love it. He's you. My
yeah, it's so
goodness.
funny.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, he's strong-willed and I'm strong-willed, right? And so us raising each other, it's been a lot for both of us, I think. And
Yeah.
really learning like, what does that mean? Like what does it mean when I have a vision? What does it mean when you have a vision? And strong-willed children in particular, they require a whole other different kind of parenting. You cannot parent strong-willed children the way you parent kids who are not strong-willed. You can't. They
Of
have
course.
different rules. Like literally, it's like you couldn't, like have an orchid and give it the same amount of food as you give another plant. Like it's just,
Right.
it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It actually has different needs. And so strong-willed kids are different. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Where's another place where parents get
Okay.
into trouble?
So another place where parents get into trouble is like resetting their own self-worth. So
Ooh.
feeling undervalued, feeling alone, feeling gaslit, like everybody else has it easier, nobody else has these thoughts. I used to go to the dentist and she would be like, "I'll get you out of here in just a moment." And I was like, "No, no, take your, maybe I need another filling." Like, like,
Oh my goodness. When the dentist is respite for you, we know we're in trouble.
oh my God. There is a persistent mother fantasy. And I used to have this and I didn't know this is actually a thing in the literature where mothers will fantasize about, God forbid, and nobody actually means this or wants this, but actually have recurrent fantasies about having a car accident just so they can be in a hospital and recuperate.
That
Okay.
comes up in your community, does it?
Oh no, it's a thing. It comes up in like parental literature for people who study parental
Whoa.
mental health.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so let's talk about the stress of this job.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, oh my God. Right? So, yeah. So that, society, we have a problem in society with raising kids, and it's not just our kids. It's society. It's how society views our job, undermines our job. We saw this in the pandemic. Like all of a sudden, parents were supposed to be able to work from home with no school, no daycare, no help, and somehow feed our children, clothe our children, educate our children, raise our children morally, spiritually, intellectually, while still doing our job from home. And somehow we were supposed to still do this as if this other thing weren't a full-time job,
Yeah. Yes.
right? We see this in how poorly we pay teachers, how
Yes. It's
poorly
the most
we care,
underpaid profession.
right? How poorly we care for parents in our society, especially in American society, right? But globally, this is a problem.
Yeah.
So, you know, parents are fighting this fight, just like we're fighting the fight of cell phones and screen time, and every parent is trying to get all the screen rules on their iPad and learn all
Yeah.
the different ways. The reality is this is a societal problem. And you cannot fight this societal problem alone. So yes, you can get your screen time guides and do all the things and teach your kids about all the dangers online and the iPad. And yes, we need to do that. But actually, there's a much bigger societal issue going on about our relationship to these things and our ability to be, out in nature and, in community and have real interface with human beings. Like there are so many other issues. And so actually this problem, that's why we need a community to solve it. That's why we had to create a community for parents to be able to solve this issue, because you cannot solve this issue alone in your own house. You cannot.
Yeah, this is coming up a lot with what we've been talking about today. This idea of that it takes a village to raise a child. That old adage, right? But that you are not supposed to be parenting alone. In fact, it can be dangerous to your mental health and to a lot of other things, and admitting that you need help does not make you weak, does not make you less than. It
No.
actually is a very loving thing to do, to find community in any circumstance. But in this circumstance, you creating this container and this community to feed and nourish people and be able to, for them to be able to see themselves, make sense of themselves, and also shine a light and help others. We're all leaders. We're all following in different circumstances, and being able to just speak openly about what's going on and then be able to collectively find solutions. So
Yeah.
I want to hear a little bit more about how that plays out in your community, this idea of collective knowing, collective holding, collective parenting, collective understanding. How does that practically play out in your community?
Absolutely. Okay, so what we do is we do this concept of a reset. So once a month, we'll do a public live reset on a particular issue, right? So maybe, we're going to reset potty training. We're going to reset, the teen years. We're going to reset, whatever different issue is that a parent is dealing with, right? So we
But
have
you have two different tracks in your community, right? So if your child is a teenager, it got, you're all
yes,
sitting there with other parents of teenagers, right? And then if you've got
exactly.
younger children, there's that different community. Is that right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
exactly. So we do these public live resets once a month, and then we have two deep courses. So one course is for kids that are like 2 to 12, right? For parents
Yep.
of kids 2 to 12. And the other course is for parents of kids who are in the teenage years. So that can
Yep.
be, some kids enter into adolescence very hard when they're 9, and some kids wait till they're 13. So whenever you feel
Right.
your child is entering into adolescence, but we say loosely like 12 to 18. All right. And so parents can choose, do they want to do the teen course or do they want to do the younger course? The teen course is 3 months long. The younger kids course is 6 months long. And then we reset every icky, sticky, ooey gooey, screamy corner of your life in regards to parenting. So, we reset your experience of your own childhood, your relationship with your spouse or your ex, your relationship with the kids' teachers, how you handle medical issues, how you help your child deal with anxiety, strong will, chores, bedtime, just literally every corner of your parenting existence. Or for teenagers, substances, again, anxiety, mental health, life skills, what is our job when they're teenagers, setting limits, dealing with all of the defiance that happens during those years.
There's
Everything.
so many things. And
Yeah.
is it men and women,
Yes,
mothers and fathers? Is it
absolutely.
couples together in this community,
Yes,
navigating
yes,
this
and
journey
yes.
together? I'm sure it's single parents too. It's all of the above. And how does that dynamic play out, with different parents having very different ideas of what is right or
Uh,
acceptable, or I mean, gosh, that must be a pool of
I have
wonder is
had
what's coming up for me.
I have I so it's incredible, actually. I love that you're asking this question. So one of the things that's so amazing is that we are, because we tell the truth and because we come fundamentally believing every parent is doing their best job, and whatever your right answer is your right answer for your family. You know your
Yeah.
family, and we know how to help you reset to get closer to your values, so you're living your values. Okay, so you're leaving the legacy you want to leave, but we don't define your values. So, one of the things that means is, because we're always in this win win place where we're helping people understand how to be their very best selves and how to raise kids and how to understand separation is actually key to genuine connection. What that actually means is that we get to be that in our own communities. So, I have had parents where we'll run in cohorts of like 10 families at a time, and sometimes we run different numbers, but usually it's 10 families at a time. And I've had cohorts where I've got very super right Christian families in the same cohort as a lesbian couple, in the same cohort as
Yeah.
single parents of color. Like, it's so beautiful watching these families who might not be able to be non-judgmental of each other in other places, come
Yeah.
together and be like, wow, I'm actually getting to go beyond the optics and climb into your life and see that we are mirrors of each other.
Yes.
And so we often say we create in our world at Mother Flipping Awesome, we're actually creating a microcosm of the world we want to live in. And
Yes.
we're creating societal change because a family is just a tiny little mini society. And when you then
Yes.
create a family of families, you create a community. And if we could all learn how to do this, war would be no more, right?
Yeah,
This
gosh.
is what we need. But it starts in our own families. We can be at war in our own family. And this is where we heal it, right? And so it's gorgeous. It's been gorgeous. Yeah.
And how does holding this container influence your parenting? How does how does how do the wars inside other people's four walls, as you put it, shine a light or help you see more clearly what's going on in your four walls?
Wow. Surprisingly emotional question. I wouldn't have been able to be the parent I wanted to be without the parents who've told their truth to me, trusted me, allowed me to help lead them, because every time I lead them, I'm learning myself. I show up very real in my community. When I'm struggling in my family, I tell the truth. And I've never been judged. I've never been judged. My community catches me as I am. I catch them as they are. We are the world we want to live in. And to watch it happen over and over and over again is nothing short of unbelievably inspiring. And I am held accountable to these processes that we've built that help parents. We have a very step-by-step system that we take parents through to clean up. It's like we're like the Marie Kondo of parenting. So it's like we like clean up every nook and cranny, every drawer. And so every 6 months, I'm taking parents through this whole process. I'm doing it for myself too. I'm like, and at every age, because every time I run this program, my children are a new age. So I'm
Yes.
learning new things. And so they hold me accountable to the principles that I've learned from myself and other families that have told their truth to me. So when I'm teaching not just from my world, I'm teaching from my world and the hundreds and thousands of parents I've now led up this mountain to go, listen, I like to go up to this mountain this way, but I knew a family that actually they went this back way. And I know another family, they used ropes like this. I'm just giving you all the different ways that I know. And then that family gets to choose what they do. And it is a very tender space, this work that we do. And so
Tell me more about that. What's the most challenging thing for you about holding this container?
I'm trying to think. The most challenging thing for me about holding this container is balancing how to let people know about it on the outside when the work we do is so private. I don't like to talk about it outside.
Yes.
It's so private. It's so personal. What happens in these cohorts is so raw and so real and so safe that sometimes I feel like almost every parent has come to us from another parent who's done the program. So all of our parents are the ones who back alley whisper to another parent, hey, you should go there. It changed my life. And I have a hard time sometimes, even though I know that what saved me was like talking about it, sometimes it's like hard for me even now today to talk about it because I still have that layer of like, shh, it's like a speakeasy. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? And so it's like
Yeah.
a quiet revolution.
Yeah. I can really relate to you because we have the same challenge with Skinny 60, where you just can't explain what the experience is like, particularly office hours and the video calls and the intimacy and the love and the connection that is created between that particular group of people in that cohort. It's never going to be exactly the same again, but the container has the same mission, which is love and care and respect. I'm going to meet you where you are today and let's have a conversation.
Yeah,
And
I have a conversation with you in office hours 5 years ago that I still remember.
yeah, oh,
It still affects me. It still affects me. I still ask myself that question sometimes of like, am I doing that thing? Right? Am I doing that thing that Tess asked me? Like, I still hold that. That's still one of my light posts in my life when I'm like, I need light here. I need to remember something. I need to check in with myself, right? So to be able to guide each other along the way, to have mentorship, people don't understand the value of mentorship because it's so,
I
we
know
don't
it's
do this
it's
anymore.
so incredibly important.
Yeah, it changes your life, like actually literally forever. Like it
Yes.
alters you on like a
And
cellular level.
the ripple effects, as you say, when you hear and you really take something in that has been given to you and you receive it and you continue to receive it and it continues to reverberate in a different way as you change and grow and learn. Look, honestly, I could talk to you about this all day long. um, it was so thrilling to just take a peek inside of your community. When you came to me and said, I think our communities are very, very similar. And the container is very similar, and the way that we support people is so similar. And you had obviously been inside Skinny 60, but I had not been inside the Mother Flipping Awesome community. So thank you so much for helping me see the way that you are holding space for people. It's been so beautiful just to get a little glimpse inside that. Obviously, I'll never be completely inside of it, but thank you so much for trusting me to see some of that. I always close the episode with the same thing, which is for somebody listening right now who has a dream in their heart and doesn't feel like they have what it takes to make it happen, what would you say to them?
Okay, I'm going to give you a weird answer maybe.
There's no weird answers, just whatever your truth is.
I would say get in touch with your rage.
Ooh, tell me about that.
I think that when I started to understand why Angry Mommy class made me so angry, I realized it was that my rage was leading me towards my truth. It was leading me towards what I needed to say, what was missing. And the reason I was angry about what was missing was because I have a value around the truth. And I teach parents this, like parents rage at their kids sometimes. And I tell them, and the way we heal their rage, because that's one of the things I'm known for is helping parents who have anger issues, like completely, they just lose their rage. It's just gone at the end. And the reason is because I don't tell them like, tisk, 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 you shouldn't be angry, or that's not how a parent's supposed to be. I say, you're angry because you care. You're angry because you love. Your anger is a marker of your values. Now we just have to flip from the shadow side to the positive side. So instead of being angry at Angry Mommy class, figure out what's the truth you need to say. So if anybody has something that like you're looking for it has to be me, find the places in the world where you're angry, because that will point you towards your value, and then figure out what is it, the light that you want to bring, that if you brought it, there wouldn't be a need for any more rage. That rage is your motor to find your light.
Oh, see, I don't think that's weird at all. It is so true. My dad has said this to me my whole life. Only unhappy people treat other people badly. And so when somebody is butting up against something, it's because they're not being seen or heard.
Yeah.
And that's what's coming up for me as you're saying, find what you're angry about, get in touch with your rage, because it does absolutely help you see where you feel there is a disconnect, where you're not being seen, or where other people are not being seen or heard. And it's so true. That is where you find what your calling is and where you want to be putting your time and energy to help make the world the way that you want it to be.
Yeah.
I love the honesty of that because look, that's kind of swimming around in me right now. And there's so many places I can go to with that, where I absolutely work in places where I am the angriest about, health and nutrition. I just want everybody to be fueling their body with healthy foods because people are so unhealthy when they don't need to be, when it could be, so easy and joyful. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah. Wow. I'm going to be thinking about that for a while after this. Where can people find you? Where's the best
So
place for parents to connect with you?
the best place is go to motherflippingawesome.com, and that's flipping with a G. So motherflippingawesome.com/reset. And you can find out about our monthly resets and also about our programs, which are larger resets for your life. And we help you with your mind flips, get your mind in the right place. We help give you the magic in the moment of what you do with your kids, actually on the ground, what you do. And then we help give meaning to your life and to this incredible job that you're doing. So that's the best place.
Can you tell everybody about the podcast? Because I love that they're just a couple of minutes long. They're these little kind of nuggets of gold, and you can sign up via email and get sent one a day. They're so helpful. My sister is doing it right now and finding it so helpful.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Can you tell everybody about that?
Absolutely. So if you go to motherflippingawesome.com/podcast, you can learn more about the podcast. And the podcast started, everything starts with a fight for me. Okay. That's just how I started. I was with my husband and we were in the kitchen cooking, and I was like, parents are freaking superheroes. And I was like, I am going to dress up in a superhero costume.
It's hilarious.
In regular life. And I'm just going to show parents what it's like to be a parent, like in a superhero costume, like living your regular, like very.
The one of you sitting on the toilet is hilarious.
So he was like, nobody is going to know what you're talking about. And I was like, just watch, just you watch. Like, okay, glove down. Like, that's like the best way to get me to do anything is tell me I can't do it. So I was like, and I'm not only that, I'm going to do a podcast about it. Yeah, just try to shut me up. It's not a good thing to do. So no, I mean, God bless him. Like he didn't mean it in a bad way, but he was just like, I don't know. Oh no. And the next thing you know, I had ordered this hilarious superhero costume. I started the podcast and I attached it to walking because one of my Skinny 60 habits is I walk every day now. And
Yay.
I'm taking care of myself during menopause and all of that, and really loving on myself during this part of parenthood. And so I walk every day, and I was like, I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to share my thoughts of what my true experience of parenthood.
I mean, this is the greatest thing. Like, you're not even in a studio because you're a professional voice actor as well. You're not doing that. You're just talking as you're walking. It is so great. And it's such an amazing reflection of who you are in your community. We're just keeping it real. Yeah, I'm walking. I don't care if the dog's barking in the background. So what? This is real life. Here we go.
Totally.
It's great.
Totally.
Well, Abigail, you keep speaking the truth. I wouldn't want to shut you up for all the tea in China because your truth helps me understand myself better. And I know you are doing that for so many families. So thank you so much for the way that you're showing up. And I just cannot wait for listener you to enter Abigail's world. So I thank you. Thank you for spending this time with me. I just love what you're doing so much, and I love you.
Oh, thank you so much, Tess.
Isn't she fabulous? So many takeaways from that conversation. Giving yourself permission to have a full human experience, whatever that looks like. I loved when she said not being able to be all of me was attacking the love and the joy, that we need to be honest about our experience so that we can feel the depth of the love within ourselves and in our relationships. When she said they caught me in my truth, they caught me in my experience, that is what we're doing with each other in relationship. We're catching things. We don't drop the ball. It stays in play, and that we get to choose how we throw out our offers, how we catch the offers of others, how we receive things, and how we give. That the container that you put things in matters, that it always needs to be one of respect. And am I equipped to deal with this? I mean, we're choosing to rise up and find ourselves in any situation, whether we're parents or not, right? And we can find community that helps us make sense of our experience. When she said that parenthood is an invitation to rise into your own leadership, that really spoke to me, because we're being invited to rise into our leadership every day with all of our experiences, whether we're a parent or not. And we're constantly being presented with opportunities to reset our self-worth. It was interesting when she said a family is a mini society. That made me think of my family differently, It was interesting, wasn't it? When she said, get in touch with your rage, when I asked her that final question, I'm going to be thinking about that, because that is where you find the disconnect, isn't it? Where you're not being seen or heard, or you feel like other people aren't being seen or heard. That your rage is your motor that helps you find your light. When she said that, that really spoke to me. And that we think of rage as being a really terrible thing. But when we hold it with the respect that it deserves, why do I feel like this? And is there injustice out there that I want to correct, that I want to be a part of changing a story, whether it's your story or being part of your community? I'm going to be swimming around with that one for a bit. So you can join Abigail's world at motherflippingawesome.com. Definitely listen to her podcast if you're a parent, because they're just very, very short episodes and they're so helpful. She's just an amazing, amazing resource for support. Yeah, I'm interested to hear what your takeaways were from our conversation. It was an interesting one, wasn't it? So let us know in the community.
I want to hear about your It Has To Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.